Okay. Ms. Clerk, since we've never done this here, do we need to use the machines, or can we run it as if it was without? How do you want to proceed?
So we'll run it the same as we do for regional council.
Okay.
All you have to do is press your request to speak, and everything else is taken care of for you. You don't vote. Well, you vote, but not by
Not by machine.
machine.
Ah. Okay. I'm just going to boot on here then, and then we'll start. I know the musician over there is just cringing, dead air, right? Okay, so we have quorum, so we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. So I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So next, approval of the minutes from March 22nd.
So moved.
Moved by Mancini, seconded by Mason. All in favor? Aye. Dispenses with our minutes. Approval of the order of business and approvals of additions and deletions. Ms. Clerk.
The clerk's office has no additions or deletions.
Okay, anything from committee?
I move the order of business and approval, and the order of business as presented.
I'll second that.
Moved by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Mancini. All in favor? Aye. We have an approved order of business. Business arising out of the minutes, there's none. Calls of declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Motions of reconsideration, there is none. No motions of rescission, there's no deferred business. We have no tabled matters, which brings us to the main event tonight, 10.1.1, a variance appeal hearings, case 24-350, appeal of a variance refusal, 6924 Armview Avenue, Halifax. So, thank you all for joining us here today. We're going to start this with the staff presentation, and I guess that would be, if I'm saying it right, Talina? All right, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks. My name's Talina Debley. I'm a planner with Planning and Development. I'll be presenting case 24350. This is a variance request to decrease the left yard setback at 6924 Armview Avenue in Halifax. That was refused by the development officer and has been appealed by the applicant. So a variance request has been submitted at 6924 Armview for a reduction in the minimum left yard setback. For a bit of background, this property is zoned ER1, Established Residential 1, and it's within the Armview special area of the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw. There is an existing single-unit dwelling on the property today. The proposed scope of work is a reconstruction and addition that will see the existing dwelling demolished down to its foundation and a larger dwelling constructed located primarily within that footprint of the existing building. Here's the site location. It's outlined in red at the bottom. And this is an aerial view where you can see the existing unit down by the water, and then there's a garage around midway up the lot. So the variance request is for 1.8 meters. The zone requirement for that side yard is 4.5 meters. This is a simplified version of the site plan that shows the outline, the footprint of the existing dwelling that's there today, and the hard black line is the property line, and this dashed line is how close the addition onto the building is going to that side property line. There's a more detailed site plan that has a bit more context for this. So this part that's outlined in green here with the dashed line kind of going around it is the existing foundation of the dwelling that's there today. And the part that's surrounding it on blue on that side is the proposed addition. And so you can see that it's going up to the 1.8 meter mark from the property line. And this orange-pink part at the top is an easement. And so they're not within that easement. This is just kind of demonstrate the different aspects of what's happening with the site. And so, again, there's the existing dwelling footprint, and then the 1.8 meter line from the property line that the addition will go up to. So a variance may not be granted where the variance violates the intent of the land use bylaw, where the difficulty experienced is general to properties in the area, and where the difficulty experienced results from intentional disregard from the requirements of a land use bylaw. So we'll talk through these here. So the first is whether or not the proposal violates the intent of the land use bylaw. Building setbacks generally help to ensure that structures maintain adequate separation from adjacent structures, streets, property lines, for a variety of reasons, including access, safety, privacy, and consistency of neighborhood aesthetics. The Armview Special Area was established in the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw to maintain the larger than average lot areas, front yard setbacks, and side yard setbacks that had been present in the area. The proposed 1.8 meter setback is less than half of the minimum requirement. Again, that minimum requirement today is 4.5 meters. And we found that this proposal violates the intent of the land use bylaw. The next criteria is whether the difficulty experienced is general to properties in the area. So dwellings with non-conforming side yards under the Halifax Charter are able to be extended or reconstructed as long as the setback condition isn't being made any worse. The existing dwelling that's on the lot today establishes a 3.15 meter side setback that's already closer to the property boundary than the land use bylaw requirement. All properties in the Armview Special Area would require a variance to build closer to the side lot line than an existing non-conforming setback allows. In this case, the difficulty experienced is general to properties in the area. Finally, in terms of whether the difficulty experienced is the result of intentional disregard, the applicant applied for a variance in good faith prior to commencing any work on the property, and so intentional disregard of bylaw requirements wasn't a consideration in the request. So council may overturn the decision of the development officer and allow the appeal, which results in approval of the variance, or council may uphold the development officer's decision and deny the appeal, resulting in refusal of the variance, and this is the recommended alternative.
Thank you for the presentation. So next, we'll go to members of council for any questions of clarification. Seeing none. Okay, so now we're going to go to the applicant, or appellant, sorry, is going to have an opportunity to present. So they come up, you've got 5 minutes, and after that, then we'll take presentations from people in the area. So if the appellant is here, that would be Constantine my apologies.
He's not here, I'm the owner.
Oh, okay. Okay, would you like to present? Yeah, just come up there and I think just press the button. Our clerk here, she has 2 signs. She'll hold up this snazzy yellow one when you got 30 seconds, and then up will go the red one. When your time's up, we're very high tech here.
Great. So, push the red button?
Yeah, your mic is on.
Oh, it's
so-
on, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I appreciate your time. I understand you guys are probably much more pressing issues, but I do want to have a chance to explain to the neighbors, because I didn't get a chance to meet most of them, to address their concerns. And I do want to address their concerns and work with them on this. The reason I'm asking for the variance is that the bylaw changed after I purchased the lot. I was working on designs and plans, put the application in. After I put in the application for the permit, that's when the bylaw changed. So I guess they tell me I needed a permit or substantially approved plans before the bylaw changed. So that's what brought us here today. And it's also my understanding that the reason for the setbacks, side yard setbacks, is primarily for pedestrians walking down the street to maintain water views between the houses. But the shape of this lot, as you can see where the house sits now, I have pictures here, which will show you from the street views and could I give these to you guys? There are 4. There's 4 packages there. You can go through them. At least that's what it was explained to me from Sean Clary, the councillor, the original spirit of the change in the setback. So I am encumbered on, obviously, water on 2 sides and a sewer easement on the other side. So for me to build the type of home I was hoping to build, I was hoping to go to the previous bylaw setback of the 1.8 meters. And it already, using the existing foundation of 3.15, so it's really 4 feet that I'm looking to gain. I did meet with one neighbor, the direct neighbor next door, Ken, who's here, who's obviously opposing it. And I did ask him his concerns, and one concern, the plan showed a retaining wall right on the property line, which would affect a hedge he has. And I told him I have no issues, I can remove that retaining wall, it's not really necessary. It was just a preliminary plan anyway. Second, he was concerned about windows on the side facing his house, and the house that I have planned has no windows on that side because obviously I'm focusing on the water views, not on the side yards. And everything else I'm asking in the plan, which I think is some of their concerns, but are actually as of right, like it's a 3-story home. Again, I had originally planned a 2-story house, but because it's a little bit narrow, I'm affected, the whole lot is only 55 feet wide, like 17.8 meters. So I have, if you take off 4.5 meters on one side and 4.5 meters on the other side, because one side's water, and you can't ask, that's out of the question. I know that about asking for variance to encroach any closer to water. So my only option was on that side. So that'll leave me with 9 meters wide to build a house. And it's, so the bylaws change, but I think that is a special case because I do have such a narrow lot. Sewer easements in the back, water in the front, water in the side, which I have no options except to work with what the bylaws are. My only option was to try and seek a little more room between myself and my neighbor. So if you also look at, say, page there 6 I have numbered, you can see the sewer easement between his house and my house. So another concern is distance between houses. So there will be no a chance of anybody building any closer to each other. There will be a large distance between the 2 houses no matter what, future development on either lot. That sewer, no one can ever build on top of the sewer easement. Also, where the house is situated, if I go 4 more feet closer, it doesn't affect the views from, I was up with him, and obviously he may have a different opinion. He's here, he can express that. It's not going to change his water views. I don't want to affect anybody's full use and enjoyment of their lot. I just want to have an opportunity to enjoy the full use and enjoyment of my lot and build a house that, when I purchased the lot, that I had envisioned. And I am willing to, my plans are not set in stone. I'm willing to meet with the neighbors, address their concerns. I'm willing to make concessions. I just want to be a good neighbor and build a house and make everybody happy.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for your presentation. So next we'll go to members of council for any questions of clarification. Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just so I'm clear, so you're adding an addition to the existing building, correct? Yes. And there's no work that's started yet? No. That's right, yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So that would be the end of the questions from council then. So thank you very much for your presentation. So we're going to move now to people in the immediate area. And I gathered this in my sign-up list. Okay, so I'm going to call the names one by one on the sheet. When your name is called, you come up and you have 5 minutes to present. Same deal, the clerk will hold up signs when your time's up. So the first one will be Kenneth Lee, and after that, it'll be Karen Proke, if I've gotten that one right. Yeah, just press the button there, and when it turns red, it means go, which is counterintuitive, but
Okay. My name is Kenneth Lee. I'm the owner of 1820 Armview Terrace, Halifax. It's been my home since 2007. My property is next door to the applicant's property. I strongly oppose the project proposed, stated as request to reduce left yard setback for addition to a single-unit dwelling. I respectfully ask that the appeal be denied. My opposition is based on following 4 factors. Number 1, limiting known limitations. His lot is long and narrow. They would have known or could have learned of the side yard clearances under the new bylaws when they acquired it. Changes in HRM's bylaws are made in a highly transparent way, as they are publicized for review comments far in advance. Certainly, by the time the building was designed, the buyer would have known their plans are contrary to the bylaws. The variance should not be granted when there's no reason other than the applicant's desire to construct this particular building. Number 2, non-conforming use. Based on the structural details provided, the addition requires the demolition of the existing structure and construction of a new foundation, as you saw, 2 sides beyond the footprint of the current home. It's clear that this proposal is for new construction, not an addition. Furthermore, with climate change, as you see in the handout, the existing structure on the property has been at high risk of being impacted by inclement weather conditions. The location of the proposed foundation should abide by current municipal bylaws for construction of setbacks from shoreline and heights above sea level. 3, general adverse effects. Approval of the variance will generate difficulties that will be experienced by other properties within our neighborhood. The plans propose a 3-story building close to the shoreline. That height and placement would block existing views of the Arm from several of the neighbors. Furthermore, the application of expansive window wall systems and a patio on the roof will reduce the privacy of the neighbors and their enjoyment of their properties. This will adversely affect the value of these properties. 4, adverse effects to 1820 Armview Terrace, which is my home. The construction of the proposed building will induce detrimental environmental impacts on my property. The elevation drawings provided show a flat finished grade, but the proposed building is built on a slope. Thus, there will be a need to subgrade the property. As we know, building height is measured from the average finished grade around the building. At what height above the existing grade are they planning to put the ground floor of this house? Without an adequate setback and the need for grade elevation, i.e. construction of a retaining wall, as he has shown, to raise and level his foundation and to mitigate storm surge events, I have major concerns about erosion and flooding of my property caused by drainage from a much larger building structure and a surrounding hardscape that he's going to put in. If he elevates his property, he imposes to me the practical obligation to raise my property by a similar amount. Because in a high water situation, as water will always go to the lowest available area, the height of his land would force water on my property and to the neighbor on the other side. There's also a hedge in my property that was built by the original owners. It's impossible to build a new foundation within 1.8 meters of my property line without impacting the roots and destroying this established hedge. In summary, my neighbor should have the right to enjoy and improve his property, but not to the detriment of myself and to other neighbors, or to the character of our neighborhood. His property is not unique in having a sewer easement. The current home of his property was built on a location of a boathouse. To respect both the 9-meter water setback and the sewer easement that other homes have abided to, perhaps he should also consider construction of his new home behind the sewage right-of-way on elevated ground that he does own. The request for a variance flows from the design of a building proposed for a lot of particular dimensions and limitations which the applicant has known. Furthermore, HRM setback for neighborhood was established to retain the granularity and the character of our neighborhood, with houses surrounded by green space for light, air, and the ability to enjoy the property on all sides of the house while respecting the privacy of their neighbors. Allowing the appeal and granting variance would be adverse not only to the wishes and interests of neighbors adjacent and nearby properties, but also to the letter and spirit of the law. Thank you.
Perfectly timed. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go to our next speaker on the list, which is Karen Prokai. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm good to go? Okay. My name is Karen Prokai. I'm here with my husband today, Ian Grant. We are owners of 6918 Armview Avenue. We've lived in our home for 25 years. And we'd like to say we are in full agreement with the development officer that the requested variance violates the intent of the land use bylaw and should be denied. The following factors support our request for the denial of the variance in question. Number one, the proposed building has been called, quote, an addition to a single family unit dwelling. The submitted sketches we received have no resemblance to the existing building, including the proposed footprint of the new building. Calling it, quote, an addition is disingenuous, as it is clearly a new and much larger building. Number two, the owner of 6924 Armview Avenue would have been aware of the limitations on building on this lot at the time of purchase. Number three, the proposed building would not follow the bylaw of being above the high water mark. Historically, the original structure on 6924 Armview Avenue was a boathouse, which, from the covenants of long ago of Shore Acres, was intended to be just that. Number four, the proposed variance as per the site plan extends well beyond the footprint of the front of the existing building, encroaching on the sewer line below. A 30-foot easement of the sewer line is required. Number five, the submitted sketches we received indicate that the new building's fourth-story elevator exceeds the 35-foot maximum height as stipulated in the bylaws. Number six, allowing the variance would destroy our neighbors' hedges at 1820 and 1828 Armview Terrace. It would also require taking down multiple mature trees on the property, which would be environmentally harmful for the integrity of the shoreline. And finally, number seven, our view of the Northwest Arm is a major factor in determining the value, enjoyment, and desirability of our home. Allowing the variance with a building of such enormity would significantly block that view. The effect of this lost view on our home and those of our neighbors would far outweigh any possible benefit related to elevated property assessments because of the new building at 6924 Armview Avenue. And we submit this respectfully, myself, Karen Prokai, and my husband, Ian Grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So our next speaker will be Mark Goshen. Oh, sorry. I didn't catch your name when you came up. You'll have an opportunity at the end. There's another speaker, and then I'll be calling for other presenters in the area, and then you'll have another chance. So the next speaker is Elizabeth Payne. It was Elizabeth Payne.
Yes, I've been asked to speak on her behalf. She's entered into the clerk's office.
Just go to our solicitor and make sure we're actually allowed to do that.
There was a letter given to Ken from her.
And she also sent in a note to the clerk's office with her submission.
Ms. Clerk, do we have anything?
So we have received the correspondence, but unfortunately, under administrative order, you're only permitted 5 minutes. One individual is only permitted 5 minutes to speak, and cannot represent, you can represent a group, but if the person's, yeah, I'm just trying to, yeah.
So,
But we have,
So I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking.
we have the letter.
We have the letter, though, okay, read the letter, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So that's the end of our list. So now I'm going to call, for anyone who hasn't spoken, if you are within 100 meters, you received that letter from HRM. If you're here tonight and would like to speak, yes, please come forward.
I just have a question. I was given the letter initially, can some of the staff members read the letter so that the audience knows what is in the letter?
No, I'm sorry, we don't do that. I mean, the letter's been circulated to council. So, anyone who would wish to come forward and speak, yes, please come forward. Can you just say your name and, does she need her address? Yes, name and address.
Ella McQuinn, 1803 Armview Terrace.
Thank you.
So
Please go ahead.
Sorry?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So we're within the 100 meters, and I do know that Elizabeth Payne's letter strictly opposes the granting of the variance, but it actually upholds the staff report for many of the same reasons that Ken has put forward. The viewscape for her will be even more exaggerated because she does not have, the building will be directly in front of her house. So that being said, from my perspective as a neighbor, our family has been engaged in that neighborhood for 60 plus years, and it was in fact a boathouse, the original structure. Then it was built on through variances that were granted, and fundamentally it is a small lot that's trying to keep punching outside of the natural barriers that exist on that lot, and the most recent application for a variance continues to outgrow what should rightly happen on that lot from the standpoint of the bylaws. And so the existing building is 3.1 meters from the property line, so it already is a non-conforming lot. So what they're asking for is even more non-conformance, if you will, for no other reason than to make a larger house. So the design will go up, it will go back, it will go out, extending on the original footprint on 3 sides of the house. So, and in addition to the 3 levels, it will have a fourth, if you will, level of living space as a terrace, and also the extension of what we understand to be an elevator shaft. So that visually, if you talk about airspace, not only footprint that is being extended, but the airspace is dramatically expanded on that lot. So to ask for a variance on the setback for no other reason than to build a bigger house seems fine to ask. He's within his right to ask, but there's no other reason to give it other than he will benefit from a larger home, and the neighbors will be paying the price, if you will, by having a building closer to their property lines and one that has considerably more airspace that will take up their view and their privacy. And I appreciate what the development officer put up originally on the bullet points around the intent of a setback, which is to maintain the character, the privacy, and the usability of each individual lot. So, so that would have a material impact on a number of neighbors, not just Ken Lee, who is closest to the building, but other surrounding properties as well. So what I would suggest is that the current bylaw be upheld, that it is, that the existing footprint goes no further than 3.1 meters, which is an existing footprint, and any addition to the property be actually conforming to the 4.5 meters. So because there's so many irregular angles to the house now, there's no reason why they could stay with the 3.1 meters as the base, and then any additions actually conform to the 4.5 meters rather than 1.8. So I would propose that as well. So in summary, many of the neighbors, you have the letters in your package, many more than are here tonight, saw fit to support the staff in the recommendation and uphold the bylaw. And the fact that it was, and I'm not sure of the timing, I'd be interested to clarify, but the fact that the lot was purchased before the current bylaws, question mark, but that bylaws change and we have to conform to the new bylaws. Not because we want the old ones and let's throw out the new ones, but that we actually do have to conform to the existing bylaws for everyone in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak on this? Anybody else? Yes, sir, please come forward. Please state your name and your address when the mic turns red.
Is it red? Yeah. My name is George Ramia. I am within the 100-meter distance from this property. And we owned several properties on Prior Street, 1720, 1730, and 1740. And we just recently finished building a home there. And I think what the applicant is asking for is I think the intent is not to be negative. I think he actually wants to build a home, be a good neighbor to all the neighbors that are around. I think there's, going in, buying it with a certain rules and guidelines, and then being changed really quick after he had, ready to start building. It causes some challenges. We've built all over the city, and these things cause challenges. I think the most important thing is that if they can come to a compromise and work with the neighbors, and the intent is not to harm any neighbor. He's asking for something not, the building that he can build any way, the house he can build. He just wants to probably do something a little nicer, a little more aesthetically pleasing. So it doesn't sound unreasonable to me, so I have no objection to it.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Would anybody else in the audience wish to speak to this tonight? Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, so that's the end of people within 100 meters. With variance hearings, we do have, if people in the general public can demonstrate, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Solicitor, you have to demonstrate that you're affected in some way, but I will call for anyone beyond the 100 meters. If you can make your case as to how you'd be affected, you're welcome to present. Is there anybody else? Anybody else? Third and final call. All right. So that is the end of our speakers. Thank you very much, everyone. So now the appellant, Mr. Goshen, you would have 5 minutes to speak if there's anything you want to say based on what was said by the public presenters.
Okay, well, I did mention a couple things, but yes, the seawall now is too low. It does have to be raised. So that is part of my my plans to raise the seawall to the new requirements, which will be in line with the neighbor on the other side. The neighbor, Ken's lot is lower, and I did offer to pay to raise his wall at the same time as a gesture, and he said no, he's fine with it the way it is. So I said, okay. The hedge, the 1.8 meters, it's over 6 feet. I can assure that the foundation will not affect the hedge, and I can give him any type of guarantees that he wants, that if anything happens, I'll do whatever's possible to prevent that from happening, and if it does, I will put a new hedge, the same hedge, whatever it takes to make him happy on that. The other issues, the plans aren't final. So yes, I just show an elevator going up to the roof. So if that doesn't meet the current building codes, then that's not part of what I'm asking for. That's not really relevant to the variance. If it exceeds or doesn't meet the building codes, then obviously I can't do it. It was just something I thought would be nice to have the elevator access the roof. So otherwise, the height of the house is also part of the current building code. So that's not part of the variance request either. So, and moving back towards, building back towards the sewer easement is all as of right. So some of their concerns there are as of right, which I understand. I mean, it was a boathouse at one time, but it's not a boathouse anymore. It's a city lot. Half of Halifax was farmland at one time. It's not farmland anymore. Things have changed over 100 years, 50 years. The city's growing. People redevelop, build newer, modern houses. And that's all I'm trying to do is build a house suits the 2023, not 1950. I said I'm willing to meet with the neighbors. I'm willing to make concessions. I'm not going to break any rules. Whatever HRM decides I can build there, that's what I'll build. I didn't try to do anything before. I'm not going to do anything after that I'm not allowed to do 100% by the law. I built many properties throughout the city. I've never broken any rules. I have no intention to. I mean, I hear these stories about people who do things. I mean, that's not the way I do things. I mean, that's why I'm here. Hopefully in good faith, and hopefully the neighbors can appreciate that I want to work with them in good faith. And the sight lines from their properties, the neighbors, from the variance won't change. They still have full view of the water as it is now. The house, the new structure will be higher, yes, but that's an as of right, the height. That's not part of what I'm asking. I'm not asking to go higher. I'm not asking to go anything else. I'm just asking to use the bylaw that was in existence when I bought the lot, that changed after I bought it. Actually changed after I submitted for a permit. So I don't know what I can do to appease them, but I'm willing to try. That's all I can say. I mean, I want to be a good neighbor, but I am going to build a house there. So whether it's a house with an extra 4 feet of variance or not, the new house is going there. So whatever as of right is going to be built, something's going to be built there. That's all, you know.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you
Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your presentation. All right. Okay. Councillor Mason, do we have?
So
Okay,
may I ask a question, Steph, or should I put the motion on the floor first?
Put the motion on the floor. Oh, first you got to move to close the hearing.
Move public hearing.
It's moved by Councillor Mason, second by Councillor Mancini. All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
All right, so the variance hearing is closed. So Councillor Mason.
Okay, so to the public, I have to put the motion on the floor as written. Doesn't mean we made a decision yet. It's in the affirmative. In accordance with Section 58 of Administrative Order 1, I move that the motion before, move that the Regional Center Community Council allow the appeal. You have to second that. You're the only one here. Or you don't have to second it, then it fails. Then it fails, then we can go home.
I will second that.
Well,
Sure.
that's great. I have a question for staff, if I may.
Moved by Councillor Mason, second by Councillor Mancini. Go ahead, Councillor Mason.
If staff could come forward and describe to me what this 9-meter offset of the Northwest Arm reference line is, and you know, I was having a quick boo back through the regional center land use bylaw, and so I just want some clarity about what that would mean if it was a greenfield new construction. What kind of controls would that impose?
So the 9-meter offset of the northwest arm, essentially you can't build within it. You can't apply for variances within it at all, and the existing building isn't going any closer. So they can keep any non-conforming rates that they have if there's a building already in it. But if it was not a house on the site today and someone came in and requested to build within that buffer, that wouldn't be permitted under the current regulations.
Okay, Thank you very much. So I'll be very brief. You know, thank you for coming today, everyone. The applicant always has a right to appeal, and the residents always have a right to support or oppose. And, you know, this is a messy function of our municipal democracy, and it's often unpleasant. And thank you all for coming. I appreciate you putting in the effort. You know, my question there about the 9-meter offset, we already have a building that is extreme, like, and to my mind, is quite non-conforming, would not be allowed to be built in this way. It's about, you know, almost half the building, looks like 40% of the building is in that buffer zone. And so if this is being proposed as an expansion, this would feel to me like if we granted the variance, we would be adding additional nonconformity to an already nonconforming building under the current land use bylaw. And so while I appreciate, you know, and I got to say, I'm going to look right at you when I say it, I know this is frustrating because, you know, you bought the building or the property and the new land use bylaw, which admittedly was coming for 6 years, but people don't follow it as closely as we do around City Hall, obviously, has changed the rules a little bit. Those are the rules that are in place. So to me, I can't support the appeal. I will ask council to vote the appeal down and support the development officer. I also would like to say it's Councillor Cleary wishes that he was here today. He's was unavoidably delayed. He hasn't made it back to Canada yet, but I still have a number of seniors in your area who call me because they think it's still District 13, like when Sue Utek was councillor, and they've been calling me for 10 years. So I feel like I was quite comfortable making the motion and representing your area. So it's nice to be able to do that for you today. So yeah, I will ask council to vote to support the DO and vote down the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Mancini.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, these are always difficult, you know, and a number of you that spoke talked about your concern about the allowing the variance, and you know, many of you referred to the rules and the guidelines in place. But when it comes down to it, some of you are, you know, you're worried about your view. That's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about the variance. Some of you are worried about construction. That's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about the variance. And sir, to the owner of the property that you're looking to change, I agree, as one of the speakers said, I don't think you're looking to do anything wrong or harm your neighborhood. You just want to build the best building you possibly can on the site. The challenge we have, our hands are tied and there are rules in place. And those rules really can't be altered, because if we alter the rules in a non-conforming site already, it's, you know, the opportunity is the next site and the next site is going to be the same. So I will be agreeing with my colleague and supporting the development officer's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. Any objection if I speak from here? No, go ahead. Okay, I just have one question for staff, actually. I'm just curious, and I'm not familiar off the top of my head, with the side yard setback in Armview is a special area. If this wasn't Armview, if this was, you know, if it wasn't in the special area, would that side yard setback, would that be in conformance in an ER1?
Outside of the special areas, it's typically 1.25 meters for side yards. And so if it wasn't in that area, it would be permitted to go to the 1.8 meter. But the Armview special area was established with the 4.5. In the Peninsula bylaw, there was the 30 feet between main buildings, and that was intended to establish these like large separations between the dwellings and the lots. And so the 4.5 meters that were put in kind of reflect that intent.
Okay, thank you for that. I was curious on that. You know, these aren't fun. Sorry that it's closed at this point. So these hearings, I mean, they're not. It's not fun, right? Because I mean, you got the heartfelt representations of your community on both sides of an issue. I don't think the appellant is seeking to do anything wrong. I agree with Councillor Mancini. He's just looking to build a house here in the best way possible. And I did note the same, that a lot of the objections, whether it's height, construction, really, unfortunately, you know, that is the bylaw, that is what it allows, and that's really not the topic tonight. You know, if he wants to build something within that setback that is 3 stories high and wants to cut down trees on his property, he is he's free to do that, right? You know, we all have rights to our property, so, but at the same token, I mean, we do have a bylaw. I think Councillor Mason's point about the nonconformity is a good one. And, you know, and I always look at these things, you got to do one of two things. You have to either convince staff or you have to convince your neighbors. And I'm afraid in this case that neither has been successful, so I'm going to support the appeal, or support rejecting the appeal. So I think with that, nothing further is on the board. Question has been called. All those in favor of allowing the appeal? All those opposed? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. All right, moving along to 11.1 correspondence. Ms. Clerk, have we received any correspondence besides the plenty of stuff we received on this past variance?
So the clerk's office has only received correspondence for item 10.11, and it has been distributed to members of Community Council.
Thank you. 11.2, do we have any petitions? Members of council, do you have any petitions? Nope. Presentations, none. We have no information items. So now we'll go to 13.1.1. Councillor Mason, amendments to Regional Center Land Use Bylaw for ER zones and commercial conversions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Regional Center Community Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer, CAO, to provide a staff report regarding options and opportunities for possible amendments to the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw to consider, 1, allowing both secondary and backyard suites in ER zones rather than allowing either or. 2, updating the provisions related to the internal conversions of ER2 and ER3 zones to A, increase the number of units permitted for internal conversions in ER zones up to 5 units. B, allow the building envelope modest increases to accommodate fire escapes and or secondary egress. C, strengthen controls to reduce impacts on neighboring properties, including but not limited to garbage screening, landscaping, and parking placement. 3, enabling policy to allow affordable housing, co-housing, shared housing, and similar forms of housing in missing middle form in ER2 and ER3 zones for a higher density than permitted by the land use bylaw through a discretionary approval process, allowing limited lot consolidation while adhering to the general design standards, appearance, front, side, and backyards, with a focus of ensuring compatibility with the built form of neighboring residential units. And 4, consider relaxing or removing unit type bedroom count requirements for buildings from the conversion of non-residential buildings built before 2019 to residential, and consider recommendations to ease commercial conversions contained in the case for conversions by the Canadian Urban Institute. I so move. I'm going to punch you.
Second by Councillor Mancini.
I'm going to text your wife and tell her how you're behaving. Okay, so I'm going to go through this for the record on each one of these, and I'll try and be very quick. And I think the Regional Center councillors, this is a kind of a compilation of things we've all noted that I've especially noted in District 7, but I think are things that we can do to increase density in the regional center. The first, of course, is secondary and backyard suites. Vancouver and I believe Edmonton allow both, not either. I'd like us to study whether or not we want to relax that and make that happen. The second is in the ER2 and ER3 zones. I have a neighbor who lives in the neighborhood a block from my house, and he owns a bunch of larger, older mansion-type houses on Lilac Street, and he has he's heating basements and attics that are empty and that he is not legally allowed to turn into housing right now, and these houses are there. Right? So to me, I feel with these larger conversions, the old land use bylaw used to allow up to 6. I think that a lot of the conversions that happened in the past overloaded buildings and were done before we would have enforced building code more strenuously. I think the building code now, it should be the main control on how many units you can fit in an envelope. But I think a big piece is that we also ban fire escapes and stuff being tacked on the outside of the building, which have become places to congregate in some of the conversions that were aimed at younger people and students because they didn't have adequate common space inside. So the idea is we'll allow some modest increase to accommodate secondary egress and fire escapes, but will also require, which we talked about and ended up not doing in the center plan, that multi-conversions would have to have screened garbage and landscaping and around parking like we do with in the HR zone and corridor zone, because that is frankly what I get most of my complaints about, other than noise. Third point, co-housing, shared housing, we have a proposal, I've seen a proposal that they want to bring in to consolidate 3 lots, tear down the houses and build townhouse type form, but it's aimed at seniors, women seniors, and they want to make it so that they have a shared, like, single-loaded corridor along the back and an elevator, and it wouldn't be cost-effective to do that if they were actually freehold townhouses or individual homes, but it will look exactly like that. So that's what their proposal is, and we have other examples of shared housing and co-housing and affordable housing that could take advantage of that and would be interested in that. This is not saying that it's going to look like an apartment. The idea is that we can do some density with the existing model of the forms that are allowed. And then finally, in the last 41 seconds, I only put in consider relaxing because staff asked, but I got to tell you, I'm just going to say, I was involved with the case for conversion for months with the Canadian Urban Institute, with Paul McKinnon for downtown and a bunch of other people. I think, were you involved with that? I think a couple of us were involved with it from here. And it's not logical for us to apply a 20% of these units need to be 2 bedrooms to the people who are trying to convert the old Royal Bank or the old Bank of Montreal or the old Centennial building, because the floor plate doesn't support it. We're making it economically impossible to do that. We should be, in my opinion, happy if we get all studios or all bachelors, all 1 bedrooms, because it's very difficult because they weren't designed to be apartments. And so one of the key findings of that report was, let's relax that. So that's the intent, is to ask for a staff report that would hopefully open up some ease, the ability to get some more units without opening the center plan right up. So hope for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Mancini, nothing. I was just fishing for the discussion about height of accessory units, whether we were doing anything with that.
I don't think so. I asked that question earlier, and Councilor gave me
The stink eye, eh? Okay. All right. Glad to clarify that. Okay, no one's on the board. Question has been called. All those in favor? Aye. So that carries. So next item, motions, none. In camera, we have none. Added items, there are none. Notices of motion? Nothing today. Public participation? Anyone out there in our great crowd wish to come present to us? I think we can call it at that, since we have no members of the general public here anymore. So the date of our next meeting, of course, as required, as this committee tends to be, September 27th, 2023. I would take a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.